And good evening, everybody. Welcome into the Nittany Lion Sports Report live here on Bob Long Sports with Bob Long and Tyler Gehlhaus. Boy, I tell you, a week where Penn State has off, Tyler, and the rest of the world just absolutely explodes in college football, starting off with an absolutely raucous Friday night at the Carrier Dome in Syracuse, New York. And then, of course, Washington State goes out, and they just lay a dud against Cal, 37-3, and the race was on. A Washington loss later, a scare in Bloomington, and the Michigan Wolverines just escaped. Tyler, an absolutely ridiculous week in college football, and Penn State maybe as happy as anybody to just go in and just watch some of these games as opposed to going out there and being part of it.
Yeah, Bob, it was a week in college football where there were no ranked versus ranked opponents, but it was one of the most exciting weeks, if not the most exciting week of the college football season. I think it was 3 top 10 teams went down. Clemson went down to Syracuse. Who else went down? We had
Wazoo and Washington.
Washington State, Wazoo, and also Auburn, number 10, lost to LSU. So we had 4 top 10 teams, 3 of them, Clemson, Washington, and Washington State, all getting their first losses of the season.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Tyler, when you talk about that Auburn game, for one, that was a team that so many people here in the country thought, wow, if that team continues to motor through, that Iron Bowl is going to mean so much against an undefeated Alabama team in theory, of course, but that LSU team who, again, just 2 weeks ago, loses to Troy. The next week has to escape in the swamp with a 1-point victory over a Florida team that missed the extra point after scoring 14 unanswered points, which you don't see all that often out of that Florida team. I was very impressed, surprised that Tigers team was the one that came out and got the victory in that game. And Washington State, I just don't think they showed up, Tyler. It's a team that, and Luke Falk's a pretty darn good quarterback, but there were struggles on all sides of the football there in Berkeley. And obviously a side story there was in the middle of a lot of the fires that were going on in the western part of the United States. All our thoughts, of course, go out to those folks and to the folks that are fighting those fires. But you could see that visible haze during that game on late Friday night, Tyler. Again, you just wish for the safety of everybody there. All that aside, though, Washington and Washington State both struggled. The Huskies only scored 7 points, and Washington State, the Cougars, only scored 3. So that shakes things up. Your Penn State Nittany Lions all the way up to the number 2 team in the country in all polls. Tyler, without one first-place vote, I don't think that surprises anybody, but not one first-place vote for the Penn State Nittany Lions, and we're going to talk about that with Brian Tripp in just a few minutes. We're excited to talk to him. He also had a great weekend out in Minnesota, Tyler, as he broadcast the Penn State Nittany Lions hockey program. The Big Ten champions last year. And Guy Godowski, just a guy that does it all right from day one in that program. So, Tyler, it's Michigan week. You see the sign. Game day's in town. Before we get Brian on here, what's your expectations for the weekend?
I think it's going to be a great defensive game. 2 of the best defenses in the country, definitely in the Big Ten, go head-to-head. I'm really interested to see how Penn State comes in after this bye. We all know what happened last year after the bye for Penn State. They hosted Ohio State, upset Ohio State. The rest is history. Michigan coming in after a Penn State bye. They had a very hard-fought game against Indiana where they did not look sharp. They had a lot of penalties. I think it may have been a school record. Still struggling to move the ball. Struggling to move the ball in an Indiana environment during the day compared to a Beaver Stadium whiteout environment at night. 2 totally opposite ends of the spectrum. So we'll see. At the end of the day, I'm not sure if Michigan's going to have enough offense. Their defense is going to be a great test for Penn State, and I'm glad it will be with the game. Not to look ahead, because right now it's Michigan, 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 as James Franklin would like to say. But
of course,
it's a big test for this offense, for the offensive line, and especially number 9 and number 26 for the blue and white.
It'll be a big weekend. The first time since the year 2009 that College Game Day made its way to Happy Valley, and here to talk with us about it is the man that follows the Penn State Nittany Lion hockey program around, as well as all his duties with Penn State football. He's a busy guy these days, Tyler. It's Brian Tripp back on with us. Brian, great to have you back, and congratulations on a great start for you guys in the broadcast booth, but more importantly, the Nittany Lions hockey program.
Yeah, thanks. It's always great to be with you guys. I appreciate you inviting me on before what is a very big football game at Beaver Stadium. And one of the biggest I can certainly remember in quite some time, with two top 25 teams squaring off. But it was a great weekend for
Brian Tripp here on the Nittany Lion Sports Report with Bob Long, Tyler Gehlhaus. Big shout out to Tom Trainer, who's come on with us today and really augmented our visual setup and our technical expertise. So thanks to him. And Brian, you mentioned the Blue Bloods in the college hockey circuit. Well, two Blue Bloods going at it this weekend at Beaver Stadium. Number 2 in both polls. The Nittany Lions come in, I guess you can say, with a full head of steam, even though they do come off a bye. And Michigan, not so much, needing overtime to take down Indiana in Bloomington. Now, I'm sure you had a busy weekend, but from what you saw either last weekend or thus far this season for Michigan, what do you see? What are your opening remarks and opening thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think Penn State comes in with some momentum, obviously being atop the Big Ten East and the only remaining undefeated team in the Big Ten East. And I think the bye week really came at a good time for Penn State. They had some guys a little bit nicked up. I think they really could have used an extra week, and hopefully they used the extra week to get that offensive line situation ironed out. It looks like, at least according to their depth chart, that Will Fries is going to be the starter at right tackle. I'm not sure if you want to read too much into that, but that's what was listed on their depth chart heading into this week. And I just think it's a great time to heal up, rest up before heading into the 3 games that define your season. And that's obviously against the 3 most physical teams you'll play in Michigan, Ohio State, and Michigan State. We were fortunate. We had off on Saturday. It was a Friday-Sunday series out there. So I get to see a lot of Michigan. I thought Michigan ran the ball really well against Indiana. I saw the tail end of Michigan State, and then rewatched some of that game. I think they're really physical. They're a real physical football team. I know both teams have great defense. Penn State, number 1 in scoring defense. Michigan, number 1 in total defense in terms of yards against. Penn State's defense, if you want to compare the two, I feel like they're more of a playmaking defense. They use their speed on the edges and really have a good back end. Michigan's just really deep and strong up front. They're going to push you around at the line of scrimmage. And we saw them make some big plays late against Indiana. But that's certainly the calling card for Michigan's team. Playing good defense, getting push up front on the offensive line, and trying to find a way to run the football. And they've had really good special teams this year, too. So in a lot of ways, these teams mirror each other, that they have good defenses, they have good special teams. The one difference, though, obviously, is Penn State's offense, you would think, is light years ahead of where Michigan's is. And even if that offense struggles a bit against Michigan's defense, and I think there are some concerns, it's not like they move the ball up and down the field at will against Indiana and Northwestern, but still put up tons of points in those 2 games. And I think if there is one concern, will they be able to do enough against Michigan's defense? However, in this game, 17 to 20 points may be enough to pull out, heck, even a comfortable win.
Hey, Brian, this is Tyler. I had a question in regards to Penn State's offense matched up against Michigan's defense. Obviously, Penn State's offense has had some great moments this year and some not so great moments. Michigan's defense has been stout all season. I was wondering, in your estimation, what it's going to take for Penn State to really consistently move the ball in this Michigan defense.
I'm not sure if this is a game where they'll be able to consistently move the ball up and down the field. I think avoiding negative plays is something they have to eliminate. Against Northwestern, they had too many negative plays, whether it be quarterback sacks, they read option, or a run pass option, which is the hot word in college football this year. You cannot have yourselves get behind the sticks. So they have to find a way, get Barkley in space, get to 2nd and 7, get to 2nd and 6, then get to a 3rd and 3. Michigan's defense is the best in the country on 3rd down, so you don't want to find yourself falling behind the sticks. I think the advantage Penn State has in this game, and I know this is kind of counter to what your question is that Penn State has tons of talent to create explosive plays on offense, and I think that ultimately is what the defense, or what the difference in the game will be.
Brian Tripp here with us, BTN, Penn State Sports Network, and, of course, one of our favorite podcasts, our favorite podcast, the Between the Lions podcast, a phenomenal get and a phenomenal listen for anybody out there. Brian, you talk about explosive plays on the Penn State side. I want to talk a little bit about explosive plays on the Michigan side. There haven't been a ton to be had, but there is an absolute stud in Donovan Peoples-Jones that will return kicks, will take balls on jet sweeps for Michigan, and reminds me, maybe not in stature, but in terms of focus, to a Quadri Henderson that Penn State prepared for against Michigan. Is that something that you look to when you say, okay, Penn State's defense, how are they going to defend a star player like Peoples-Jones?
Yeah, I think that's a really good comparison. Coming into the year, a lot of people felt like he'd be the top freshman in the Big Ten, but with how much Michigan's offense has struggled, not only to throw the ball, I'm seeing that he can't get much going through the air since they don't have consistent quarterback play, but they've struggled to find an identity on that offense. I think that's kind of slowed him down, but he's so versatile. And Penn State's defense, yeah, they've given up some chunk plays at times, but they haven't given up the big explosive plays. So I think they've done a good job containing, and I think they have the skill set. When you look at, and this is coming off a week's rest, the Ohio State game and the Michigan State game, it's going to be interesting to see how fresh Penn State is for those two. But coming off a week's rest, to have Bowen, Kabinda, Farmer, Cam Brown, hopefully back in the lineup, out there running around on the field. I think Penn State's linebackers will make a difference, where if Michigan wants to use him in that Swiss Army knife type way, I think those linebackers with their ability to contain, with their ability to run side to side on the field. I thought Kabinda had one of his best games, maybe even of his career against Indiana the last time Penn State played at home. I think they can do a pretty good job of containing him in that aspect. And then if it comes down to the secondary, containing him through the passing game, and that's if Michigan can throw the ball accurately. They're only completing 53% of their passes this year. I love Christian Campbell. I love Grant Haley. I think Amani Oruwariye has been the true surprise player and the emerging standout for Penn State this year. I thought that was a spot where Penn State, that third corner spot, would have to come down to Lamont Wade or to Tariq Castro-Fields, with John Reed not available. And credit the veteran. Amani's been one of the best players on the Penn State defense.
Brian, one more thought for you here when it comes to this Michigan offense. The running game, you said that they ran the ball effectively. I would tend to agree with that, and we've talked around the issue of the quarterback, but obviously Wilton Spate done, and it would appear for the year. John O'Korn has come on in his place, and he was a guy that took a couple snaps during that Florida game, the first game of the season at the neutral site, and you know, I think that there was some maybe unrealistic expectations the way Wilton Spate was struggling in that first game. But I think we found out that John O'Korn, at least that was ready for that Michigan State game, or maybe not so much. So this Penn State football team, as they see what happened against Michigan State and Indiana, what is the preparation like for a quarterback that's struggling the way O'Korn is, even though he has all those weapons?
I think you will have to get after him, and this is going to come down to Penn State's defensive line, and Michigan has been a bit susceptible to sacks allowed this year, and it's that defensive line, whether it be the Cothrans, Kevin Givens up the middle getting some push, and of course Sharif Miller, Buckholz on the outside, and I thought Shaka Toney and Shane Simmons looked pretty good against Northwestern, and that was a terrible Northwestern offensive line, but they still had to go out on the field and perform, and they certainly did. I think it comes down to them getting pressure on O'Korn and forcing him to make mistakes. I thought O'Korn was pretty serviceable in the Purdue game, kind of led the comeback there, and Michigan looked okay offensively against Purdue. And then Michigan State, I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because in the second half there was a monsoon, but he continued to look ineffective against Indiana last week. And Michigan turns the ball over on offense, so Penn State's defense has been one of the best in the country at creating turnovers, 17 turnovers created. That's third in the nation. I think as long as Penn State can play mistake-free football, special teams offensively, and avoid giving up the big play on defense, they'll eventually get their turnover defensively. It's kind of like we saw against Pitt. Pitt kind of moved the ball, had good time of possession, but I don't know if this is a fair comparison. I don't think they're the same player. I think O'Korn might be a little better, but kind of like Max Brown eventually just wasn't good enough to get the ball in the end zone for Pitt. You already made the comparison with Henderson. O'Korn, is he good enough to get Michigan into the end zone on the road in a tough environment against an aggressive Penn State defense that has guys that can really run? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, Brian, I totally agree with all your points that you made right there. I think that O'Korn's going to have a tough time moving the ball against Penn State's defense in Beaver Stadium. Another question for you in regards to Penn State's offense against the Michigan defense. It seems like all the coaches this year, and rightfully so, have done everything they could to slow down Saquon Barkley. Nobody's been able to totally stop him, but some teams have been able to slow him down better than others. Obviously, that's going to be Jim Harbaugh's game plan to slow down Saquon Barkley. Who do you think outside of McSorley and Barkley could have a big game, big opportunities because of Michigan keying in on Barkley and McSorley?
I think Gesicki's due. He's just due for a big game. He's an All-American tight end. They need to find a way to get him the football more. Let him go up, make plays. I think you'll see Penn State try to stretch the field more. After the Northwestern game, James Franklin said they still have a couple of packages they haven't shown opponents. And McSorley, the offensive line is going to need to find a way to give McSorley time to throw the football. I would expect Gesicki to have a big game, and I'd expect Barkley to be involved more in the passing game if Michigan starts to take away the run. Michigan's going to get after the quarterback. They're averaging more than 3 sacks per game defensively. So if Penn State's offensive line, fresh, rested, and Michigan had some guys get nicked up in that Indiana game, if they can give McSorley some time, I think Gesicki is due for a big game. I don't know if that's because I necessarily love the matchups or just I feel like here's a guy who was banged up. Now he's got the bye week to recuperate. Hasn't been as big of a part of the offense as I imagined him being. And I think it's his time to shine, and this is the type of game where McSorley will go to his best weapon outside of Barkley. And that's not a knock on Juwan Johnson and Deshaun Hamilton. They're great players. But Gesicki is a true NFL talent at tight end.
We talk about the defensive line, and you talk about it here certainly as well. I think we would agree that it's the strength against the weakness, Michigan's defensive front against Penn State's offensive line, and we've talked a little bit through how we think they'll be able to deal with it. Let's get predicting. What do you see, Brian Tripp, and what do you think that the result will be of pin their ears back, let the Wolverines have at it, and a Nittany Lion offensive line that, while it struggled, has had a week to rest? What do you see happening there?
I think the bye week is huge for Penn State. I think this game, as you said, has a couple of interesting matchups. I think both Penn State's offensive front against Michigan's defensive front, and then conversely, Michigan's offensive front against Penn State's defensive front. That could ultimately decide the game. And then let's not forget about special teams. Michigan has the nation's best kickoff return defense. Penn State leads the country in kickoff return yards per return. Michigan's got a kicker, Quinn Nordine, who famously or infamously climbed off a plane, committed to Penn State, flipped his commitment to Michigan, and has been one of, if not the best kicker in the country, nailing kicks from quite a bit of distance. And Tyler Davis has struggled for Penn State. So I know the odds makers are saying 11.5, 12.5 point favorites for Penn State. And Penn State clearly looks like the better team. I just have the feeling this is going to be a defensive game. Which team can make more plays? And if it comes down to which team can create those 1 or 2 explosive plays, to me, that's absolutely Penn State. And I think Penn State's a better team, a more complete team than Michigan. They certainly have more experience in big games. And isn't it crazy that we can sit here and look at this game when just over a year ago, Penn State was 2-2, was throttled 49-10, and they've been 15-1 since that point. What a different story it's been. But Penn State, to me, is the favorite in this game, and rightfully so. I think they win a hard-fought game, maybe win it by 2 scores late. But I think Penn State makes enough plays to win the game.
Brian Tripp on with us here on the Nittany Lion Sports Report. You see his affiliation on your screen there, the Big Ten Network, and he also calls Penn State hockey. All right, let's talk about the fun of the weekend here. And there's a big board behind us here, Brian, that is informing people what the time of day is and then a certain other fact that I bet you can guess. So for Nittany Lion fans making the trek up to State College, College Game Day is in town, lots of other great festivities, and, of course, the famed Whiteout. So as a man that has been there for, I'm sure, one or many of each of those occurrences, what can we expect up there in Happy Valley?
I'll be honest, guys. I'm looking forward to this one. I haven't been at a Whiteout in a few years. The hockey schedule is conflicted. 2 years ago when Michigan was here, it was at the end of the year, and we were in Alaska, so I was watching it at 9 a.m. In Alaska or 8 a.m. in Alaska on TV. And last year we had a hockey game against Notre Dame the same night in South Bend. Penn State had a dramatic overtime win, but that was lost in the shuffle thanks to Penn State's blocked field goal. Grant Haley going to the house. So I'm looking forward to being there for the first time in a while. But every Whiteout game is special. I think this one is as highly anticipated as any game since Beaver Stadium expanded to its current size. It's going to be crazy. I mean, it's a full day of fun and football. If you're a college sports fan, this is a bucket list item. Even if you're just a sports fan and maybe you don't even follow college football all that much, the environment will be electric. People will be screaming. The whole town will be buzzing probably by Tuesday this week, maybe Wednesday. RVs will roll into town on Thursday. Friday, the town will be packed. There's nothing like being on a college campus. They take the stadium out of it, which is just going to be as loud as anyone's ever heard. And I think the press box may shake several times during it. And that makes you, I don't know if people who haven't seen it, it's not the most sturdy structure. So it will be a little bit unnerving up there. But there's nothing like a college campus heading into a big football game. There's just a buzz on the campus. So it's going to be a fun week. The tailgating lots will be packed. People will be going crazy. The students will be in the stadium early. The fans will be buzzing, watching other college football games. Just the significance of this game. It may draw the biggest crowd in Beaver Stadium history. I mean, the biggest crowd was in 2002 against Nebraska, 110,753. I really think this could surpass that, assuming the fire marshals let that many people in. I think it's truly going to be a special night. And look, Penn State's favored after Michigan didn't look great last weekend against Indiana and did not look great at all against Michigan State at home. People expect this Penn State team to win and get to 7-0, setting up a matchup with Ohio State for perhaps the Big Ten championship next week. So the crowd will be electric. It will be fun.
Brian Tripp from BTN, from Penn State Sports Network, broadcast Penn State hockey, and of course Between the Lions podcast. Please check that out, folks. He, Matt Bortner, and Jason Lord do such a great job. And Brian, thanks so much for coming on. I'll see you up there. Maybe we can catch up for a few minutes again this weekend, and hope all's well.
All right. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Always enjoy coming on, and have a safe trip up here. Looking forward to it, and I'd be happy to come back anytime.
All righty. Thanks again.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. That's Brian Tripp. Great job once again by him. He always brings it, Tyler. What were your thoughts? First takeaways from Brian's thoughts there tonight.
First of all, Brian is always an extreme wealth of knowledge. All of our callers have been exceptional this season. Brian really knows his stuff. Very dedicated. The facts that he rattles off is unbelievable. So, again, great to have Brian on. Hope we can have him on again soon, Bob. First thing that comes to mind, I pretty much agreed with everything that he said. I think it is important to note that he brought up the field goal kicking. Quinn Nordine, who was committed to Penn State via a video of him getting off a private jet and then decommitted, and then the famous sleepover with Jim Harbaugh, which happened 2 years ago to lure Quinn Nordine to switch to Michigan.
That's right.
He is a Michigan product. You really don't think of losing a kicker to be like a big loss in your recruiting, in the recruiting world, but this was, whether or not Penn State wants to admit it. I mean, he's 17 for 17 for extra points, and he's 14 for 16 for field goals. And I know that he's 2 for 3 from 50 plus, which is incredible for a college kicker. So I mean, if it comes down to special teams and field goal kicking late, that's going to be something that, as a Penn State fan, that's going to worry me because of Tyler Davis's inconsistency this year. We saw what he could do last year, hasn't been there this year. Hopefully the bye gave him an extra week to relax, work on his game, and hopefully he can go back to the form that he was in for last year. But outside of that, I agreed with everything Brian said, and it should be a great matchup with two great defenses, and I think Penn State's defense might have something to prove that maybe they are the best defense in the Big Ten. Everyone keeps setting the bar at Michigan. I think Penn State is right there with them, and with a good showing this week, they could overtake them for that spot up top for the best defense.
I got a comment, we'll say, from a listener of ours, and they said they enjoyed the show and everything we had to say. And this is maybe a minor picking point. He said he did not think the bye came at the right time. He thought, and maybe this is overlooking the Wolverines of Michigan, that he wanted Michigan while they were struggling, maybe an Indiana spot going into last week. Maybe that was prophetic. And then to have that week in between Ohio State. Now, if you saw Ohio State out at Nebraska, Tyler, and when they were up 56-14, audibly you could hear in Lincoln, beat Penn State, beat Penn State. So now Penn State has this game against Michigan, and all of a sudden is on the radar of the Ohio State Buckeyes after their big win last year and, of course, their number 2 ranking in the polls. Sparty follows that, 2 straight road games. So how do you evaluate the 3-game stretch with all that in mind?
Well, I must say about the bye, I think that I don't know if there ever is a right time, a good time, bad time. I mean, because if you're Ohio State, they're playing ever since they lost to Oklahoma. Granted, the opponents they've been playing haven't been the best. They've been playing some really good football. So for them, is it a bad time for them, even though they get a full week extra to prepare for Penn State, whereas Penn State's playing Michigan? But what if it kills their groove and their
Sure.
you never know. I mean, it's the kind of thing that if Ohio State ends up beating Penn State, people will say, well, they had a great time for a bye. Well, the same could be said for Penn State last year when they beat Ohio State. It's just you never know who's going to show up. I don't necessarily think there is a bad time or a good time for a bye. I like that Penn State's was right in the season to set up this big 3-game run that will not be easy by any task. But I do think that a bye maybe after Michigan leading into Ohio State would have definitely helped them. But at the end of the day, you don't get to pick the schedule, so Penn State's going to have to deal with it, and I think they'll play out just fine for them.
Nittany Lion Sports Report here on Bob Long Sports. Bob Long, Tyler Gehlhaus. We have Tom Trainer here as well, helping us with the technical expertise here tonight. It's been great, and obviously you see the pictures on your screen right now. Those are always phenomenal, but also a great look at the inside of our studio. Thanks for being here with us. And we got the better lighting. We got the Penn State flag here. We got a nice little moniker behind us just so everybody knows what time it is. We're having a good time here, Tyler. It's good to be back.
Better than ESPN, Bob.
Wow.
Any day of the week.
Wow, okay. Our Philadelphia PA studios here. How about it? How about it? So again, Bob Long, Tyler Gehlhaus, Tom Trainer alongside. As we break down the rankings here, big shakeups from last week. The number 2 team in the country, the Clemson Tigers, go down to a Syracuse team that had really been looking for that signature win for a very, very long time, and they were able to get it. I was very impressed by that team, and of course, shout out to Zaire Franklin of LaSalle College High School, senior captain, middle linebacker on that Cuse team. And then Washington State and Washington both going down. Chris Peterson, boy, when he was with Boise, they always seem to drop one. Drop one they shouldn't, and drop one they did to Arizona State, if you can believe that. Todd Graham and company. Shout out to all our Pitt listeners.
I want to touch on that Syracuse-Clemson game first. That's the kind of game I did say last week on air that Clemson would drop a game. And Bob asked who, and I said, I'm not sure if that was on air or maybe it was after.
The Tigers, Clemson? You thought
was
they,
that on?
Yeah.
I did. Okay. I know we discussed it. I couldn't remember if it was on the show or after. And I said, maybe at NC State I could see giving them a tough game. And little do you know, they lose on a Friday night in the Carrier Dome, which is more known for Syracuse basketball than it is for football. But it was the football team's night to show. And you got to give Syracuse credit. I mean, they played an unbelievable game. I watched the whole game, and I just kept getting the feeling that Clemson was going to find a way. But really, Syracuse controlled the game. Clemson lost their quarterback, Kelly Bryant.
Yep.
Dabo Swinney said he's not sure how long he's going to be out for. They do have a bye coming up, which helps that case. But I mean, Clemson, it's that typical game that they tend to lose every season. They lose a game that they really shouldn't.
They should not.
But we'll see how it plays out for them. It's going to really create an interesting last couple of weeks here for the playoff picture. And I want to give a quick shout-out to Dabo Swinney. I'm not sure if you heard this, but
I did.
After the game, he actually went into the Syracuse locker room and congratulated Syracuse on the upset and the win. And I think, that's just such – you don't see sportsmanship like that this day and age a lot. And for a guy who won the championship last year, obviously, they are the targeted team this year, Clemson, throughout college football. For him, after an emotional loss like that, to go congratulate the other team is just incredible to me. And I have so much respect for him, and my respect continues to grow as I think he's one of the best coaches and best all-around ambassadors for college football.
Before that story came out, Tyler, you're watching the game live, and the coaches meet at midfield, and Dabo Swinney, you could absolutely read his lips. And what does he say? But I am so happy for you. I am so happy for you, he says. And what a statement that made. And then to continue and go into the Syracuse locker room, that really is impressive. And he's a guy that you see these stories with him a lot, and sometimes the reaction can be, that guy knows how to market himself. He understands good press. That all may be true, but he's also doing a lot of things that nobody else is doing. And I totally agree with you, Tyler. He's a good man, it would appear, from the exterior, and he's a fun guy to watch on Saturdays, and in Penn State's case, on Friday nights at times. Maybe that's a bugaboo there, but I did think that was a phenomenal gesture, and I saw that as well. Here's something else that I thought was phenomenal. In the AP, now again, none of this matters because the college football playoff poll has not come out, Tyler, but Michigan started slipping. Michigan State got credit, I think, a week too late for their win over Michigan. Remember, the Wolverines came in at the number 17 team in the country the week after they lost at home to Michigan State and looked entirely inept on offense in a game that, by the way, remember, had two halves and only one of them had a rainstorm. They looked inept in the first half as well when there wasn't that monsoon. So Michigan State gets that win. They have the same amount of losses. Their only loss is to who I believe is a really good and still underrated Notre Dame team. They're ranked number 21, the Spartans are. Michigan continues to be ranked ahead of Michigan State. This is last week's poll. Now this week, Michigan struggles in Bloomington. They win in overtime. Michigan State, a lot bigger of a win than it looks like against PJ Fleck's Minnesota team. They were up 30-13 midway through the fourth quarter, and Minnesota added a late touchdown after scoring one earlier in the fourth to make it a 3-point game. But if you're watching that game, it's not a 3-point win. And I think the AP finally respected that and did, in kind, put the Spartans up ahead of about where they should have been last week, but ahead of the Wolverines. What were your thoughts, Tyler?
I actually didn't look that far down the list, to be honest with you, Bob. I think that Michigan State, they're both 5-1, and Michigan State beat them head-to-head. I definitely think they should be above them. A lot's going to change, obviously, within these next couple of weeks. And like you said, the college football playoff is released on Halloween night. That's Tuesday, 2 weeks from tomorrow, I believe. Yep, 2 weeks from tomorrow. And that's really the only thing that matters. There's obviously a huge shakeup in the top 10 with all those teams going down. But, I mean, Michigan State and Michigan still have very, very tough roads ahead. So, I mean, where they are now is certainly not where they're going to be when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I can certainly understand that. All right, that's too far down the poll for you, you say. Let's look a little higher. Ohio State still ranked above Oklahoma. Oklahoma beats Ohio State by 2 touchdowns in the shoe. Now that's week 2, and Oklahoma struggled the last 2 weeks, losing to 31-point dog Iowa State, and then this week a win against Texas in the final minute, having to stop a Texas drive moving down the field. Now, not that the Red River rivalry is ever easy, Tyler, but is this Tom Allen team truly a team that should be playing Oklahoma, a national championship contender, that close?
Probably not, especially with a freshman quarterback in Ellinger for Texas, who actually looks very good for a young freshman. He has some wheels on him too. But like you said, in these rivalry games, you never know what's going to happen. Records go aside. It doesn't matter. It's Texas versus Oklahoma in the Red River. You could be 0-6 versus 6-0 team and knock them off. I am a little surprised. I don't think Oklahoma's playing that well, and I think that's probably why you see them below Ohio State. Ohio State, ever since they lost to Oklahoma, has been dominating teams. Like we said earlier, not the most glamorous schedule in terms of opponents, but they've been taking care of business, and quite frankly, Oklahoma's been struggling since then. I mean, they barely beat Baylor. They lost to Iowa State at home, and they barely beat a much inferior Texas team. And so, I mean, I think that's probably why you see the ranking there the way it is, even though Oklahoma went to the shoe and beat Ohio State.
Yeah, and I'm starting to understand that a little bit more because it can be a little bit more of a lifetime achievement award for this Ohio State team, and specifically when we talk about Oklahoma as well, that one time week 2, a lot of times you'll see that where a team, maybe early on in the week has the opportunity or early on in the season, Tyler, can go out there and drop a game, but come back and really play better in the second half of the season, earn their way into the playoff spot, and I think that's what's happening with Ohio State. Of course, a big one coming up in the shoe on October 28th.
Sure, yeah. I mean, Bob, but we can't look ahead to that game yet. We can a little bit. The team can't. Without a doubt, that game is going to have unbelievable Big Ten and playoff implications. And I think Brian said it a little bit actually tonight that with all these teams that went down, it in my opinion, if Penn State loses to Ohio State but wins out, they could end up and Ohio State goes on to win the Big Ten championship with that one loss coming to Oklahoma. I think that Penn State could actually still end up making the playoff if they lose in Columbus and win out and some things take care of themselves. I don't want it to come down to that, but I wouldn't be surprised because the Pac-12 is certainly shooting themselves in the foot. And really so is Clemson, and the ACC could be in some serious trouble too. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But without a doubt, next week is going to should be one for the ages against Ohio State.
Nittany Lion Sports Report here on Bob Long Sports. Bob Long, Tyler Gehlhaus. We have Tom Trainer as well here. Another look at our studio here. Appreciate everybody being with us here today. A great interview with Brian Tripp in the first portion of the show. Brian Tripp, a good friend of ours, and of course a correspondent with BTN. You saw his picture and that logo on the screen today. He also does Between the Lions podcast and gives us a little bit of insight. Bob Long, Tyler Gehlhaus here. A great show this evening. And Tyler, when we talk about where we go next here, I think it's fun to get back and reminisce a little bit on the last time that College Game Day was up in State College. That was the year 2009, and we both had the opportunity to be there. In fact, we saw each other, unbeknownst to us that 8 years later we'd be doing this here on BLS. And Tyler, what a great day that was. It was
Not the game.
Okay.
The game day was great.
It was a great day. I mean, listen, hey, I know that loss was not good, and Adrian Claiborne blocks Boone's punt, runs it back for a touchdown. It was that god-awful 10-5 halftime score.
And in the rain.
That you only see in a Penn State-Iowa game. But what a great day it was at College Game Day. A good day for the university. Again, we can talk about that result. That result was a shame. It was a year where they thought they might have been going to the national championship game. It was a year that ended in a Capital One Bowl victory against LSU. But, of course, that game was – I think a lot of people expected them to win that game. It was an unranked Iowa team that came in. This a little bit different. One of Penn State's biggest rivals, Michigan, a team that I think had more expectations than they're actually going to come to town with, which differs from Iowa, which I think we all left with a little bit more respect for that Iowa team than they came in with. And this year, now, Penn State is, I would say, on the way up, whereas in 2009, I don't know that we knew it at the time,
right,
but they were on a downward trend. A little bit different, but a very appropriate time for College Game Day to come back. What were some of your memories and experiences from that College Game Day time? And for those of you watching on Facebook Live, you can tweet at us as well. What are your thoughts and expectations for this weekend? What are you looking forward to? And if you were so inclined and if you were so lucky to be there back in 2009, what were your experiences like?
It was my first College Game Day. I also went to the College Game Day last year in Indianapolis for the Big Ten Championship. But to have College Game Day at Penn State's campus, I was a sophomore in high school. It was a great atmosphere. Like I said, the weather wasn't the best, but it's something that definitely brings the fan base together. People get really amped up for it. And I remember, I was obviously friends with your brother because we were playing baseball, Kevin, well, until I switched for lacrosse. But I remember you from when we were younger, then we kind of like lost touch. And then I'm like, oh, there's Bob Long. Like, he must go to school here. And Bob's holding the sign. I'll let him tell the story about his two signs that he was holding. Great signs.
Thank you.
So from there on, I would talk to him here and there about, Penn State football. He was even nice enough to host my buddy and I to his apartment that one year for the Alabama game. Not sure if
That's
you remember
right.
that.
No, I remember well. It's a good
so,
time.
Yeah, for that home Alabama game. But College Game Day, it really is great. And there's some people that say, oh, we don't want them to come because ESPN, and they don't like what they did to Penn State with the whole scandal stuff. But at the end of the day, you want them there because it's going to bring such a nice positive publicity to the campus. They're going to be set up this year as opposed to in front of the Bryce Jordan Center with Beaver Stadium in the background. This year, they're actually announced today, they're going to be on the Old Main lawn with Old Main in the background. So it's going to be great for them to showcase.
Do you like that? Do you like that call?
I think it's cool. I think that they saw what JMU did against Villanova last week in the quad area at JMU. I think a couple more schools are starting to go to this more like a classroom, like a more popular quad or a nicer, important academic building on campus that everybody knows.
Or Times Square.
Or Times Square. So, I think it's a good change. I mean, obviously the lawn in front of Old Main can fit all those people. I did like the backdrop of Beaver Stadium in Game Day. I thought that was pretty cool.
I thought that's where they'd be going
back. It wouldn't surprise me if they set up a stage there for like later, closer to the game, maybe not like a big rah-rah like the premiere show. But it really is good to see. They're going to really showcase Penn State, and it'll be good because recruits are watching, and fans all across the country are going to be able to see not only the game at night on national television, but everything leading up to it in the morning as well.
Yeah, we're certainly looking forward to it here on BLS, and going to be heading up there for that game. We're looking forward to seeing some of you. Of course, if any of you guys see us, come on up and say hello. And I think that this is just a phenomenal weekend for the school. And we mentioned JMU, Villanova. You look behind us, you can see the Restore Villanova football frisbee and, of course, the big Penn State flag. So we have college football adorning our entire studio here this evening. And the other thing that came out, big story, Kirk Herbstreit of Ohio State lore and, of course, of College Game Day, and is the primary color man for the ESPN college football primetime games on Saturday nights, said that he wants, when he talks about and has an opportunity to interact with kids from all these different schools, the football players from the big programs, Alabama, Auburn, Stanford, Southern Cal, Nebraska, Penn State, Ohio State, he wants his son to grow up like a Penn State football player. And he says, I don't know how it is or why it is, but from generation to generation, team to team, player to player, unlike any other school he's seen, Penn State has a consistency of a man, a consistency of character that he has not seen at other schools. It's pretty nice words from a guy that is really plugged in all across the country, and of course has said nice things about Penn State in terms of the whiteout, in terms of being the best student section in college football, which he maintains to this day.
Sure, that's a great thing to hear from Herbstreit. I know a lot of Penn State fans, including myself, have gotten a little sour grapes over the things he said, maybe some of his opinions. People tend to think he's
Matt McGloin?
Sure, yeah, and people tend to think that he's biased towards Ohio State, which he may be, and it's hard not to as a former player, but he does a pretty good job of not showing his bias. I think that for the most part, he actually is a pretty good, a very good football analysis, and he's pretty fair at the end of the day. And I think for words to come out of his mouth like that about Penn State football players, I mean, there's not much more you can ask for. I mean, the championships are great. Hopefully we have many more coming. But at the end of the day, compliment like that from a guy that's been around so many football programs and sees it day in and day out. I mean, that's something that that Penn State players currently and past players should really be proud of.
You want my thought on it? He is absolutely drop dead the best analyst that there is out there. I think he's the most unbiased. I think he's the fairest. I think he's the most eloquent, and I think he's the smartest, maybe with the exception of my boy Gary Danielson on CBS. But I think Herbie has it all, always have thought that way. I don't know that he's ever biased against Penn State. I mean, you can give me some examples, but I think he's said more nice things about Penn State than he has about Michigan, Michigan State, than he has about Nebraska, than he has about anybody else in the Big Ten besides Ohio State. And, of course, we're not talking partiality towards Penn State. That's just more to say I think he's acquitted himself very well from a partiality and lack thereof perspective.
Well, I know that a lot of Penn State fans were upset when he said, like, he wasn't sure if Penn State passed the eye test, whatever that is, and that Ohio State did last year. And a lot of people get upset with his rankings, and he put Ohio State in over Penn State in the playoff. But still, he's not the one making the decision.
He's not. And
so
it's one extra loss,
right?
Plus a win over Oklahoma.
I know.
I mean, we don't want to get back into it, but I can totally understand why he said what he said. I don't think it's based on bias.
But I think that's what people think when and a lot of people are happy that the game isn't called on ESPN, the Penn State Ohio State game this year. It's actually going to be on Fox.
Right.
And people are actually pretty excited about that because they don't want to listen to Herbie. And I think a lot of people compare him to like Joe Buck hating Philadelphia type of thing. And I'm not sure if it's a really fair assessment or not. But that's kind of
the Buck thing is absolutely ridiculous.
but that's what a lot of Penn State fans do compare it to. And now I'm going to sound like the biased one here, but I actually think one of the best commentators and analysis in college football is Todd Blackledge.
I agree.
I think he is phenomenal, and again, that's me showing my bias because he's a former Penn State quarterback.
See, I don't think it is.
But
we toss that word around too much.
Yeah,
in society.
it's too much. People are linked to who, and I'm sure that there's people from Michigan that think Desmond Howard is the best, which I don't think he is. But
can I tell you who
you're
else
entitled
isn't?
to your opinion.
Can I tell you who is not? Joey Galloway is not.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that one.
But the Joe Buck thing, I don't necessarily want to hit, but I can tell you that I have friends, and I've counted from 8 different towns across this country that have come up to me and said that Joe Buck is biased against their team. You know what that means to me? He's doing a pretty damn good job.
Yes.
It means he's doing a pretty damn good job if everybody thinks that. It means he's giving you the hard-hitting analysis and actually can bring it a little bit. But just my thought on Mr. Joe Buck. But when it comes to Herbstreit, the only thing I would say is I do wish it would be on ESPN because you know what I think we'd get? I think we'd get another sighting of Kirk Herbstreit saying that the Penn State student section is the best in college football. I think this will be the best avenue and the best medium and the best showcase of the Penn State student section since Ohio State in 2005.
Well, we will have Herbstreit for Saturday night. It's at.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry.
It's at Ohio State. We will not have him.
You're
so
exactly
it'll be perfect because we'll have
Bob
him.
Long looking ahead.
You
can't look ahead. Akron.
It's a good thing you're not playing though. I mean, but no, it'll be great because the it'll be a night game. The student section. It'll be Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit.
Of course,
we know that Herbstreit loves the Penn State student section and. It'll be an absolutely great platform, again, like we already said, for Penn State.
Yep, I agree. I'm with you now, Tyler. All right, so we have about 9 minutes here until the hour is 9, but as you see behind us, in our minds, it's still 8 o'clock, and Michigan is still Michigan. Prediction time, Tyler, for the game this weekend. Coming off the bye against the Michigan team with a backup quarterback, having trouble throwing the football, but there are still weapons there if they can get it to the right guys. Who do you have on Saturday night in Beaver Stadium prime time about 10 hours after College Game Day begins?
I'm going to go with Penn State 27, Michigan 16. I think Michigan gets 3 field goals from their kicker and a touchdown to make it 16. And I think Penn State's going to put up 27. I think they are going to have 2 field goals from Tyler Davis. I think he's going to start off well for the second half of the season. And I think that they will have 2 offensive touchdowns, and I think they will have either a defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown. I'm really leaning towards a pick 6. O'Korn, I just think, is going to be completely rattled out there. I mean, he hasn't looked too great this year outside of that Purdue second half. I just think that he's going to be totally rattled. I think Penn State's defense is going to be dialing up some pretty good stuff. And I think there will be a pick 6 at Beaver Stadium on Saturday night. So I'm going to go 27-16. I think it'll be a defensive battle. It's not going to be easy for Penn State's offense, but it's a great test. And at the end of the day, even though if you can put up 27 points even without the defensive touchdown, it's a great day for Penn State. At the end of the day, all you need is a win. So
Tyler Gehlhaus's advice is take the points. That's what I'm hearing.
Take the points.
Penn State 11.5.
Well,
take the
I
points.
saw, though, it came down to 10. So
Did it really?
I'm not
Oh,
sure
so you
what to
missed the
believe
vote.
if it – but I'm going to still float in that 10 to 12 range, and I'll go 27-16, though.
Okay. I think it's close. I think it's a close one. Give me Penn State 24, Michigan, we'll call it 17.
Okay.
Something in that perspective. One-score game. I think it'll be tough. Because Michigan's defensive front seven is going to create issues. They're going to try their best to neutralize Saquon Barkley. I want to see if Penn State is going to utilize some draws, some counters. The issue there, though, is that this Michigan defense is so hungry, is so impressive against a struggling Penn State offensive line that they may not have the time for a draw, a counter to work.
Right.
So will they go quick outs? Will Trace
I'd like to see the
McSorley be able to
screen
fill the
passes.
gap? Okay, the screen passes.
I think
right?
that
So
could
they
be there.
blitz in a free safety or bring in an extra corner and this free safety up, make one guy miss type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wonder what's going to happen with that middle section of the field. Will the linebackers vacate? Well, when they start blitzing, are they going to spy one? Will Trace McSorley be able to pick that out? They're going to contrive some very complex defenses, I think, this weekend, and that's going to be the key for Michigan, is can they win the turnover battle? It's an area where Penn State has been very successful in the time since they lost 49-10 to this Michigan team. They've gone 15-1 in that time frame, and they've won the turnover battle in just about every game they've played. Michigan's going to come out and try to win that battle. Of course, you always do. But they're more well-equipped to compete with Penn State in that perspective than just about anybody else. So I think Michigan's going to get at least a turnover. We'll call it a pick from Trace McSorley. And can they bring it back, or can they get it in very good field position? It will become a field position game. Turnovers are going to be a key in that. So I say Penn State by one score. Michigan's going to give them a scare here at home, even though it's an 11.5-point line, at least to open.
Sure. I have a question for you, though. You know how a lot of fans have been not totally with the wins. They're kind of, oh, well, it should have been better. Is a close win against Michigan good enough? It's good enough. Because a win's a win. At the end of the day, you just have to win.
A win's a win, and by the time you figure out how to dissect that game, where are you thinking? You're thinking about the shoe on Saturday.
Right.
The next Saturday against Ohio State. So a win is a win here. You're getting into that time frame where you just got to get that win, especially with the team coming up next. But I put nothing past our good friends on the message boards here at Penn State.
Sure thing.
And listen, hold them accountable. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
But we've had to bat it away with sticks at times here in terms of defending the way this team has played, because they've actually, I think, played quite well this year. The expectations, I think, have been unrealistic. Trace McSorley up around 70% passing. Was on pace to throw for more yards and touchdowns. And he is going to take a few more sacks this year. I don't think that's as much his fault. See Saquon Barkley in the running game at times. So you got a better Trace. You definitely have a better defense. Would you say quicker, faster, deeper?
Mm-hmm. Well, especially last year at Michigan with the injuries we had on defense. I mean,
yeah, Michigan to Michigan game, sure.
Right. We had, last year when we played Michigan was better when we played them, no doubt about it. Penn State was down to about their third string linebackers across the board. It was ugly last year, and I think that revenge is on Penn State's mind for this week, and then next week it's going to be the opposite. So
my point being, when I talk about the defense and the team playing better, I mean after the Michigan game. People view the rest of that season last year under such rose-colored glasses, Tyler, that when you think about this year and you win 45-14 against Indiana, but you had trouble moving the ball in the second and third quarter, you're thinking, well, where is this team that was playing last year? They're playing significantly better than they were last year. I mean, the Ohio State game, they couldn't move the ball. They blocked a punt and brought it back. Southern Cal, they played phenomenally on offense. The defense did not play nearly as well as they should have. Now, Bell was out for the last quarter and a half, and that hurts. Wisconsin, they dropped down 28-7. I know people remember that, but it's just good to remind. 31-7 against the Northwestern is fine. 45-14 against Indiana is fine. They nearly gained 500 yards in total offense against Iowa. Did they cash in when they should have? No. I think they've worked on that, and they've improved that. Also have to give that Iowa team a lot of credit. The point being, Tyler, they played pretty damn well for the first 6 games of the season. And I think when you view last season with rose-colored glasses, it kind of makes it a little bit more difficult. And that's the only point.
I totally agree with you, Bob. I do. I don't have any comment outside of that, though.
The only thing I'll say, no Chris Godwin.
Big difference.
At times, I would say, has
Use
affected
security
this team.
blanket, so.
Yeah.
Toss
it up.
About it. Quick thing for the viewers. Are we changing time, date next week for our viewers out there?
Yes, next Tuesday night we will be on. I'm heading down to the Philadelphia Eagles game on a work assignment, so looking forward to that. And we'll be back on Tuesday after the Michigan game to preview Ohio State. So very excited for that, Tyler. Hope you are as well.
Watch out for the undercover security guards down there in those Redskins jerseys, Bob. Take one from me. Don't make the same mistake I made.
Let's hear it. 2 minutes. Give it to me. Or not. That's fine.
No, I'll go into a little bit. Just for your the fans out there, don't get into a taunting chant with other Eagles fans to a fan, a.k.a. security guard in the opposing team's jersey. That might be NFL security, and they may eject you for taunting. So for all the viewers out there, don't do what the group of 100 people I was with was doing, because you will be guilty by association, and you do not want that. So
yeah, Bob Long Sports received a call after that. So we actually issued Tyler a 5-day suspension from all on-air activities. Thankfully, that didn't overlap with any one of our shows.
It did not overlap.
So that's good news.
For the people that are going Eagles games out there, just play it safe, and you never know who's watching, I guess you could say.
Great show here, Tyler. Great to be with you. Thanks again to Tom Trainer for coming on behind the camera there and helping us out with everything we're doing here. And for both of them, I'm Bob Long saying so long here from Philadelphia. Enjoy the game next weekend, a 7:30 kick under the lights with College Game Day at 9 a.m. for everybody heading up there. Enjoy your time, and we'll talk to you on Tuesday.